welcome to the National APIA-Strong Strength and Diversity Conference. So I have to say, last night was fantastic. All the conversations, the excitement around the day ahead. And also, it is great to the fact that, if you think about it, that we're not seeing each other in those virtual little boxes. Because I have had it with those boxes, as much as it's great to be able to converse and to interact. But seeing all of you and meeting all of you, I so look forward to that. So we're so fortunate this morning to be joined by our distinguished panelists, Congressman Mark Takano and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Thank you all for being here, and we're certainly looking forward to your personal insights and the discussion. This morning, I am honored to represent Toyota at today's conference. Those of us from Toyota, please give a little wave. So I've got my teammates who I hope you all get to know as well. They're fantastic, ranging from different parts of the organization, from procurement, as well as our government affairs team. Toyota has been a long champion of Asian American Pacific Islander small business community. When we saw that the AAPI entrepreneurs needed help during the pandemic, we knew we had to get involved. We directed funds to our AAPI partners so they could provide and offer COVID-related assistance to their team members, and they did a great job. National ACE created a website to serve as a COVID-19 small business emergency resource hub with in-language information. They also hosted webinars, conference calls, and online meetings to communicate important information from government agencies. Ascend Pinnacle used their Toyota funds to support the Asian Corporate Directors Pinnacle Summit. They also created an amazing COVID-19 resource guide tailored to the needs of the Pan-Asian workforce. The Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies developed online COVID-19 resources and hosted teleconferences featuring leading Asian and Pacific Islander Americans. In the Asian Pacific Islander American Scholars Program, we're able to provide 22 students with over 2 years scholarships for higher education. Toyota is incredibly proud to partner with such phenomenal organizations. Supporting the AAPI community comes naturally to Toyota. Internally, we have the Toyota Asian American Society and Alliance, also known as TASIA. TASIA is one of our company's long-standing and largest employee resource groups. It allows our AAPI team members and allies to come together and help Toyota transform into the most effective mobility company possible. TASIA drives business decisions, gives back to the community through volunteerism, and creates a diverse and inclusive work environment. Our headquarters-based chapter has over 600 participants alone, and I'm honored to serve as the executive sponsor of the TASIA Advisory Council, and I'm incredibly proud of the work TASIA continues to do. We've supported Chetna as well, a Dallas-based nonprofit that assists South Asians who have experienced domestic violence. TASIA provides workforce readiness training, resume reviews, job search support, and interview coaching. And for the past 9 years, TASIA has partnered with the APIA Scholars, funding over $700,000 in scholarships to underserved students and providing mentorship to help the students succeed. So it's safe to say Toyota is heavily involved in supporting the AAPI community. We're so compelled by the Toyota Way principles, which guide our company. We strive to demonstrate respect for people and pursue continuous improvement in everything that we do. We firmly believe that we can only thrive when our communities also prosper. By working with different organizations toward a common goal, we expand our reach and galvanize our impact. We are truly stronger together. And it's why we consider National ACE to be so important to our shared success. On behalf of Toyota, thanks again to everyone for being here, and a huge thank you to National ACE and Chiling Tong and Karen and the extended team. You have done phenomenal things over the last couple of years, and we appreciate all that you've done to enable a brighter future for us all. Thank you. So it is now my honor and pleasure to introduce our congressional panelists. We are very excited, as I just mentioned, to have two members of Congress with us today to discuss the importance of AAPI businesses, the challenges facing them, and one of the first steps in achieving equity for underserved communities is to have leaders who understand and care. We are immensely grateful to have such AAPI leaders in Congress who tirelessly advocate for our communities, lead by example, and expand the thresholds of what is possible. Moderating this panel, we have Susan Jin Davis, Social Impact Officer at Al Roker Entertainment and a National ACE Board member. Susan herself is a creative visionary, a community leader, a connector. Susan, it is my pleasure to hand it over to you to moderate this important discussion. And if I can also ask to please join us on stage, Congressman Takano and Congresswoman Jayapal. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I am so excited to be in person at the National ACE Conference, and I welcome you all to this, what's going to be a really amazing conversation with two leaders in our community who are role models, who are breaking barriers, and we are really proud that they are representing the AAPI community. But more than that, these members of Congress are ensuring that justice, freedom, and liberty are afforded to all Americans. And so thank you so much for being here today. So let me start off with a question for both of you, and that is, tell us about your AAPI communities in your districts. Who are they? What are they up to? And some of the initiatives that you're engaged in helping the communities there. Mark, you want to start?
Well, great. Well, my AAPI community, as a matter of numbers, is relatively limited. I mean, it's about 5% according to the census. The census, I think, probably undercounted in a lot of ways in my area. I'm kind of angry at the census, but of that 5%, the top immigrant group is Filipino. The second is Korean American, and the others are sort of, in the 1 or 2%. But my own family, come from immigrant stock. They came to Riverside County, which is the inland area of Southern California. It's like if you travel east of Los Angeles toward Palm Springs, that's the inland area. My own grandparents settled there after the war and became farmers. My maternal grandparents, that's entrepreneurial work. A host of Nisei farmers did that, and my father's father tried to regain his footing after losing his property in the Washington State area. Internment took away their 5 acres in Bellevue, Washington, where now stands a hotel. So there was a huge generational loss there. He tried to make it as a farmer, but then he ended up his final years as a gardener. And I remember going on gardening trips with him in the summer. But now the AAPI community is, as with a lot of immigrant communities, have moved to the inland area. Just across the street from me, where I take my dry cleaning, there's a Korean-owned dry cleaner, and the Korean Americans own a lot of dry cleaners in Southern California. Next to that is a nail salon, which is a Vietnamese-owned nail salon, and a pho and crawfish restaurant, which is very good. I'm thinking about taking my father there when I get back to Riverside. So just know that in my area of California, the Riverside San Bernardino area, minority entrepreneurship has grown by 50%, and it's even is characteristic of this kind of, I would say, post-pandemic, because the pandemic's not really over, right, Pramila? We still need pandemic money in this CR. And it's, even in contrast to national trends, entrepreneurship is really strong, especially among minority and AAPI businesses. The vast majority of them are small. They're 20 employees or less. You know, the initiatives I'm making sure, I'm asking my office to make sure that we are outreaching in AAPI languages, even though the populations are small. I just ran into some Vietnamese immigrants who, you know, they're much older and they hardly spoke any English at all. And I'm just worried that we're not. And look, this is, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do want to mention one more thing. My area of California was represented by the very first AAPI in Congress. His name was Davidson. Like my colleague here, my amazing colleague here, he was an immigrant who naturalized. Amazing story, Davidson. He himself was an angel entrepreneur. He tried his hand at farming when his PhD in mathematics, applied mathematics, couldn't get him a job. He was discriminated against with a Berkeley PhD in mathematics, applied math at that. He then turned to becoming a fertilizer broker, which is a small business. And then you can read, you know, there's more of his story. But, you know, I want to uplift his name, take this moment to uplift his name. I am the heir to the first AAPI in Congress. AAPI immigrant in Congress who naturalized, fought for his own citizenship, and became a member of Congress. How about that?
Thank you. And let's remember what important points that you made. Access is so important, and language allows that kind of access for our community. And secondly, for those of you owners out there, you can run for office. You've got a good foundation in order to be an elected official. Those are some takeaways.
Yes.
All right, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you to National ACE for having us here today. It's so wonderful to be with my colleague, who, by the way, is the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee, a very powerful committee, and he did an amazing, yes, he deserves that. He really did an amazing job getting the PACT Act to the floor to take care of our veterans. And I'm very grateful to have him on the executive board of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which I chair. So for us in Washington State, we have been so proud of our heritage with AAPI communities. We, as a state, for a very long time, were one of the very few states that had equal numbers of AAPI immigrants, of Latino immigrants, and then of everybody else, because we were a refugee resettlement state, one of the top refugee resettlement states. And our Republican governor actually was the one to bring Vietnamese refugees here after the war. But even going back further than that, our community is extremely diverse. It is not possible to say AAPI and think of one community in Washington State. We have the Chinese immigrants who helped build our railroads, were so critical to our infrastructure. Unfortunately, were marched down to the docks in Seattle in 1910 to be put on boats and shipped away. Luckily, we had, you know, a big effort to fight that. We, of course, had the Japanese Americans who were in Washington State. We have a very large JA community that I've worked with actually since starting an organization after 9/11 to take on hate. The JA community was right there with me and saying, we know what happened in 1942. We want to make sure this never happens to anybody else. We also have a very big South Asian American community. We have a lot of tech organizations in Washington State, and because of that, we also have a lot of immigrants who come to Washington State to work there. My district in particular has a vibrant Chinatown International District area. Of course, we have, we think, some of the best food in the country. We're ready to fight you on that. But it's not only that. I mean, we have AAPI immigrants at every, sort of in every sector. And I think it has been really wonderful to see the entrepreneurship, the creativity. We just did the first of these in the country, a small business summit with the with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, for Korean American businesses to be able to benefit from trade. So these are particular efforts that the SBA, because of money we put into this in Congress, are really trying to lift up the opportunities for small businesses to be involved in trade. So it's been a wonderful thing to represent my district, and as Mark said, I am the first South Asian American woman to serve in the United States Congress. And I was elected at the same time as another very important South Asian American and black woman, Senator Kamala Harris, and I were elected at the same time. So, also, as Mark said, I'm one of only a couple dozen naturalized citizens to serve. So I was born in India. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old by myself, and I had nothing in my pockets, and I think it is the great American dream that we can go from that place as a young 16-year-old by myself, my parents still live in India, to be a member of Congress representing and lifting up the incredible diversity that makes America as wonderful as we are.
Thank you. And, you know, the takeaways there, we represent our communities because of who we are. We are representing the issues of our community, but we're also Americans. We're veterans. We're business owners. We're part of the economy. We're part of the community. And this reminds me of the poet Ocean Vuong, who is a Vietnamese American, and he writes about the fact that immigrants and refugees are the most creative and innovative people in the world because they have to reinvent themselves. So think about that. The heritage that we have makes us more creative and innovative and can contribute to this country and to the world. Congressman Takano, you have made small businesses a priority, and you care about access to capital, like through microloans. You want AAPIs and others to have access to federal contracts. You also care a lot about rent increases and rent hikes. Talk to us a little bit about that issue. What do we need to know about that? How can we get activated on that? Because many businesses in this room and elsewhere are faced with expenses that are hard to cover in an economy that is still recovering. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you should remember as smaller businesses that you shouldn't be daunted by asking local government, organizing number one, and demanding that local government be sensitive to you, local and state government be sensitive to you. Because what you're up against, and in my area, what they're up against are, e-commerce has become a very dominant player. I mean, nearly a third of all e-commerce in our country somehow goes through my region with huge warehouses. Now, these warehouses didn't just spring up all by themselves. There were tax incentives, there were tax-free zones and all sorts of things like that, which were government accommodations to encourage this sort of thing. Now, you might want to be asking yourself, why is this only good for the big guys and not for you? Should there not, in a rising rent environment, should there not be some consideration to maybe the property tax that is extracted from you, the small business owner, when there have been definitely accommodations made for the big players. So, that's one thing I would put on the table for you. We know that nearly a third of small businesses in our country are struggling to pay their rent. And it does no good for a community to see small businesses of any type be closed out. I mean, we just can't go to like 100% services and goods being delivered, to our doorstep by whatever delivery company that is. There are some solutions at the federal level. There's the 504 loans from the SBA, which help small businesses actually make permanent purchases of real estate instead of having to rely on renting. Unfortunately, this program in particular is very undersubscribed by small businesses that are owned by AAPIs. And I suspect it has to do with the fact that the outreach is very inadequate. We know that PPP, for example, the program, and Pramila had, she and I have some opinions about how all that came about, but the government was just not, the federal government and the ways in which we reach through the state governments, they weren't really prepared to make sure that AAPI immigrant businesses or AAPI businesses and business owners were communicated to, and I'm not just talking about the 504 program, but there's a series of, PPP program. A lot of our AAPI businesses missed out on some of these opportunities because of that language barrier. And this is something that, I will work with Pramila on with the Progressive Caucus, within my own district, to heighten initiatives to make sure we reach out to small business owners in the languages that are dominant for them.
Okay, and I hope the audience really gets the message that it's not enough that we have these leaders on the Hill working for us. We have to voice our concerns as well. We need to get out there and speak up. And I want to warn you, tomorrow there's going to be hundreds of AAPIs descending upon the Hill. So you may warn people that we are coming, but it's not just one day, everybody. It's every moment that you can, so that you can be at the table when laws are being considered, when policies are being considered. So, Congresswoman, there has been a spike of AAPI violence and hatred over the last couple years. This is not new to our community. We are a community that has been exploited, displaced, and has had hate crimes against us for many years throughout our history in this country. You've been outspoken about this topic, and in fact, you personally were threatened by a gunman who was outside your home in Washington, essentially threatening your family, and saying racial epithets and just spewing hate. Talk to us about your work in that area, and how can this group of business people get activated on that as well?
Yeah, I mean, this is not new, as you said. Unfortunately, we've seen hate and discrimination against AAPI communities throughout our history, and we were excluded from immigration laws for a very long time, going back to the Chinese Exclusion Act. South Asian Americans were excluded really until relatively recently. And so there is an anti-AAPI sentiment that unfortunately pervades some parts of our country, and I think we've done a lot of work collectively, to really show our contributions, show our patriotism, but it gets questioned. I've been here since I was 16 years old, and I can't tell you, I've lost count of the thousands of times I've been told to go back to India. And so when incidents like this, and I did have a pretty horrifying incident that was in the Washington Post, you can read about it, and I decided to talk about it because I think it's important for people to understand how pervasive, how damaging, how absolutely not in our interest as a country this kind of hate and violence is, and how it continues, and we have to fight back against it and speak up against it. I got my start working on some of these issues after 9/11. And I was just an activist at the time. I'd been working on international development issues. And after 9/11, I ended up starting an organization. I didn't know I was going to start an organization, but there were so many hate crimes against Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, South Asian Americans, and I got involved in fighting back against that, only to realize that it was also the government targeting, at that time the Bush administration, but the government targeting of civil liberties based on ethnicity or race or place of origin. And that's when the Japanese American community came up and said, we've seen this before, do not fall into this. And it was very, very useful. And so that's how I got my start, is working on hate crimes and hate violence and government-fueled policies that targeted and discriminated against people. Now, what was that, 2001, so 21 years later, I find that we are still working on this. Of course, in Congress, we've passed a number of bills to acknowledge hate violence against AAPIs and to say we have to stop this. We've passed some additional tools for law enforcement, but I can tell you that even in my case, it was very difficult to charge that as a hate crime. That individual has been charged. He's been charged with stalking, but charging it as a hate crime, even though he said, go back to India, he had a gun, is very, very difficult. So what do we do about that? I think what we have to do is not be cowed, not feel like we have to, crawl into a corner somewhere and avoid violence, but actually speak out and do the work that we do as leaders in our communities and encourage people to come together in these moments. I always say as an organizer that strength comes in times of crisis. And to see, just as we did after 9/11, just as we do after any major issue, a community coming together, and the recognition for the AAPI community is really important. But small businesses, on top of the COVID pandemic, AAPI small businesses had to deal with this as well. The violence in Georgia, at the nail salon, the numerous incidents of our AAPI seniors being targeted on the streets. This has been a very painful time for our AAPI community members and particularly small businesses who were also targeted directly. Businesses had to adjust their store hours. They had to, in many cases, close. They had graffiti sprayed on their walls. I mean, these are the things that I'm dealing with in my district with small business owners and making sure that those small business owners have the support and have the community having their backs. And so I think, we just have to continue to educate people. The messages that I get of hate and violence are not only violent messages that other members of Congress who are not people of color may get, but they are absolutely laced with a kind of racism and sexism, for that matter, that you do not see in other kinds of violent messages. Am I going to stop doing what I'm doing because of those? Absolutely not. I am here. I'm a member of Congress. I'm going to continue to speak out for our community. I'm going to continue to make sure to organize, and I know you've been doing a lot of this work, to get our folks engaged, to be voters, to be advocates, to push for things that are important so that people understand we are not just, add-ons to whatever the community is. We are an integral part of our community on every level. We are big business leaders, small business leaders, we are nonprofit leaders, we are elected leaders, we are moms, dads, children of immigrants. We are all of these things, and we need people to see us in our wholeness and in our fullness. And if anyone ever says, go back to the country that you came from, I'm going to say, this is my home. This is my home. I'm staying here, so get used to it.
Thank you. Now, the AAPI community is the fastest growing in the country, but we're still at about 6% of the overall population. So we're relatively small. The two of you could not have achieved what you've achieved without coalition building, without collaboration, without partnerships with people that are not like us. So talk to this group about how important it is to have those coalitions, to have partnerships with other communities, with other groups. Otherwise, we're in this scarcity model, aren't we? My group gets something, your group gets less. Teach us a little bit about what we ought to be doing in our communities to build partnerships that will support the AAPI community, not just amongst ourselves.
Well, thank you for that question. And actually, I represent a voting rights district, which is majority Latino. And I'm very proud to do that. And I can tell you that the Latino population in my district, the community, they very much, I think, can identify with my own story. But I had to learn that story as a third and fourth generation Japanese American. It was not a story that I knew all the details to. And I had to learn and really think about what it meant for my Issei grandfather, who my paternal grandfather, who after he lost his, it wasn't actually his property, it was his wife's property, because he couldn't buy property because of the alien land laws. And Pramila, even before there were the Exclusion Acts, don't forget that immigration law made it impossible for any Asian immigrant to naturalize. That existed since the beginning of the Republic. It was one of the first laws they passed when they organized the country. So this sentiment and undertone, this tone with Asian immigrants has lasted as long as the country. I mean, it's a harsh fact, but it is a fact. You know, he was at Long Beach Harbor when his wife, my grandmother, had a mental breakdown, and they were going to repatriate to Japan after they had lost all this property and his dream went up in smoke. But you know, I think about a 40-something-year-old man with 5 little children, speaking very little English, making the stand. He didn't run away, and he made the hard choice. And I always get emotional when I think about that scene. And the next several years, an aunt who my grandmother's older sister, or actually younger sister, was a teenager at the time, staved off a suitor and said, "No, I can't marry you until these children get older. I have to help my older sister who's disabled." That's the kind of sacrifice. But you know, it's the story also. When I tell that story about my grandfather being the first dreamer, who in his whole lifetime spent most of his life not able to naturalize in this country because of the racism and discrimination. I mean, he came here in 1918, and he couldn't become a citizen until the 1960s, but he was far too busy to even think about becoming a citizen. And if you want to understand why a lot of people who were eligible for citizenship in this country didn't actually exercise, they were too busy trying to feed a family. And so it's like, it's this empathy and understanding. And so when I speak to immigrant populations, immigrant groups in my district, I tell them this story, and they knew they had a champion who would be right alongside an immigrant member of Congress who would stand up for them and be on the right side, but not just for politics, because this was my own story too. So understand, and I also want to lift up my late mother, who connected with the Japanese American growers and farmers and built an insurance practice, and was one of the early pioneers with her insurance company. Back when I first ran for Congress in the 90s and went to the boardroom of New York Life, it was a very stodgy place. Today, New York Life thrives on immigrant salespeople to sell insurance policies. And she bought, with her wealth, a Lexus, because she wanted to drive to her insurance meetings in a car that was suitable. And then she later started her own small business, a knitting store, in the last part of her life as part of her dream. But just know that we have work to do. We know that 75% of small businesses in California of AAPI businesses are first generation. They're immigrant businesses. PPP was a terrible, terrible problem because, one, they weren't aware that PPP existed. 2, there were language barriers in completing the application. It was complicated. We need to make sure in the future that whenever these situations arise, that we are able to get information out to the community, and we're also able to help people through and navigate these issues, navigate the completing the applications. But I want to just finish on this one final thing. 2 amazing new members of Congress that you're going to be hearing about. Maxwell Alejandro Frost is like 26 years old, campaigns on this theme of your neighbor's success does not come at your expense. Your neighbor's success is your success. My success is my neighbor's success. And people are hungering in this country for messages, or just the truth, that that's true. Robert Garcia, who is the mayor of Long Beach, who will be the new member of Congress from California, first LGBT immigrant member of Congress, he said something very, very poignant. And David Cicely and I were like listening to him. He said that he got his citizenship through the Reagan amnesty, the Reagan immigration bill, and he says, I owe everything to this country. I love this country, and he says, July 4th isn't about dressing up in red, white, and blue. It's about understanding that patriotism is loving everyone in the country, including its immigrant people.
Thank you, and I love the fact that you can use the common experience to bind us together and to build that partnership with other communities, and the message around how we can all help each other grow together and succeed together as a community.
Your success is my success.
Exactly, love that. Congresswoman.
Well, your question was about coalition building, but before I get there, I just wanted to say something about the PPP and getting money out to businesses. One of the things that we have learned is that if we use the existing structures, it makes it very difficult for our communities of color, our AAPI businesses, our immigrant businesses to access those institutions, because big banks may have relationships with big companies, but they don't always have relationships with small companies. And so I introduced a bill that I pushed very hard, and I'm going to continue to push for, and actually it led the speaker to create a special select committee on some of these issues. But it's a Paycheck Recovery Act, which is different than the PPP in that the money could go directly from the IRS to small businesses. So you wouldn't have to go through another organization in order to access those funds. And that was something that small businesses, including AAPI businesses, were telling us would be so fantastic, because every small business already has to file a tax return. So they're already in that system. And imagine if you didn't have to go to a bank to actually get it, you wouldn't be in that situation. And of course, we'd have to make sure that there were culturally competent language services and language access as part of that. So we're going to continue to learn from some of the things that didn't go as well as they could have. On coalition building, I mentioned that Washington State has a third of immigrant populations, so there is no way to do anything on your own. This is not an oppression Olympics. We are not trying to figure out who is the worst, who has it worst in our communities. Every community has struggles. Every community has to understand that they're part of a larger whole. And I think sometimes all of my work prior to coming to Congress and in Congress now is about building large enough coalitions that you have political power to move issues that are important in different communities. If I'm with you on that, you got to be a friend to have a friend. It's something that Wade Henderson, who used to run the leadership conference, used to say all the time. You got to be a friend to have a friend. It is an important community that we are trying to build. And we have to understand that just because my situation isn't quite the same as yours, I might still be experiencing struggles, you might still be experiencing struggles. What does that require? It requires us to also talk to our own folks. It is much easier for us to speak to people that are in our own community, often in immigrant communities. We don't really go beyond those boundaries. And it's also easier to say, and I'll just give you an example, in the South Asian American community, when I was first working on immigration, because my organization became the largest immigrant advocacy organization in Washington State, one of the largest in the country, I would hear from people that, oh, we shouldn't be working on those undocumented immigrants. Sometimes a different word was used that I don't like to use. We should be working on those of us that came here legally. And I had to go to Microsoft, where there was a huge South Asian American group, I am South Asian American, and say to them, let me show you the history of immigration in this country. Let me show you how South Asian Americans came to this country, and let me tell you why it is absolutely wrong for you to be saying that. We have to be honest about this. Sometimes we don't have to do it in public all the time. Sometimes we do it in private. But it is important for us to speak out on behalf of other communities. And I have often had people say to me, Pramila, you started One America originally to deal with backlash against Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, and Sikh Americans. You're not Muslim American, you're not Arab American, and you're not Sikh American. Why did you do that? But to me, it's because we may have come over on different ships, but we're all in the same darn boat now. So that's a phrase from a very prominent civil rights leader. I'm not claiming it for myself. That is the nature of how you build community and, by the way, how you build political power. You think anybody is going to move an issue just based on a very small community? Unlikely. You're going to have to bring in a lot of different people to stand together with you. And I think that is so powerful also from an inspirational and hope perspective of who we are as Americans.
Okay, wow. Write this down. I think there's at least 3 main learnings here that we heard from these great leaders. The first is relationships, relationships, relationships. Get out of there, get out of your house, get out of your business and meet people. Your elected officials, your bankers, anybody who can be part of your greater community to lift you up. Number 2, use your voice. Get out there and talk about our community, talk about what is concerning you, make those phone calls, talk to these folks. And just because you're not from their districts doesn't mean they don't represent you. They can connect you to the right people, and they can also lend a voice to your issue. And number 3, you can't do it alone. Work with other community members, partners, collaborators, work together, because alone we're not going to be able to lift our own boat. And so we need to do that kind of coalition building and community building. Please help me thank these great leaders for taking time out of their busy days to be with us today. Thank you so much. You contributed so much to this conversation. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of Ashford Connex and National ACE Board Member, Grace Lee.
Thank you, Congressman Takano and Congresswoman Jayapal and Susan. We really appreciate the insightful discussions about the strength and the importance of AAPI business, and the importance of continue to build the coalitions and partnership and use our voice to advocate us. As a business owner, I'm very proud to be a part of the economy that contribute and make a difference in these great countries. I'm very excited to have this opportunity to meet a lot of prominent speakers, organization leaders, and the business owner. Hope we can take this advantage to share our experience, our challenges, especially in the past 2 years, how we overcame them, and the obstacles lying ahead of us, how we can work together and collaborate moving forward so we can make the AAPI even stronger. Next, I would like to, it's my honor and a pleasure to invite our keynote speakers, the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communication and Information and National Telecommunications and Information Administration administrators, Mr. Alan Davidson, to give us the special remarks. Assistant Secretary Davidson is an internet policy expert with over 20 years of experience as an executive, public interest advocate, technologist, and attorney. He was recently a senior advisor at the Mozilla Foundation, a global nonprofit organization that promotes openness, innovation, and participations on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote speakers, Assistant Secretary Davidson.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you, Grace, for that introduction, and thank you for your own work. I had a chance to read a little bit about it, the work that you're doing to develop our workforce. It's actually very inspiring. So, and it's inspiring and wonderful to be with you all here today. I'm Alan Davidson, Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and on behalf of NTIA, the organization I lead, the Department of Commerce, I just want to say thank you to the National ACE for your leadership in advocating for the AAPI community, for your friendship and support, and for your support of our many missions at the Commerce Department, including creating new opportunities to grow minority-owned small businesses. I'll just say this is a very historic time at NTIA and the Department of Commerce. We have been given a very simple but audacious mission, which I'd love to talk to you about. The mission is to connect everyone in America with high-speed, affordable internet service. And the president keeps saying everyone, which makes me a little nervous. But he means it, and so do we, so it's no pressure on us. I will say equity is really at the center of this work that we do and that we're doing at the Commerce Department. I like to think of digital equity, I call it the beating heart of our programs. We're implementing policies that are designed to reach historically underserved communities, businesses, people. We know that America's diversity is our big competitive advantage, but it only is our competitive advantage if we give everyone the opportunity to participate and fulfill their potential. We can't leave anybody behind, and that is the core of what we are trying to achieve with these programs around the internet. As we know, it actually hasn't been the case that everybody has opportunity online. We've been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 20 years. And we know that it has disproportionately affected low-income and minority communities. 2 decades ago, more, when I started working in this space, the internet was a luxury. Today, it is a necessity, and you all know this. The internet is the essential tool, not just for communications, but for access to work, access to education, to healthcare, to justice. To have a thriving economy, to allow American businesses and workers to compete in today's global economy, everyone in America needs that access. We also know that Asian American communities, for example, are experiencing both parts of the duality around the internet, right? On the one hand, studies suggest that Asian American workers, for example, make up as much as 27% of all technology sector workers. That's what's possible when you have access to technology and skills and hard work. On the other hand, we know that there are pockets within the AAPI community that routinely suffer high rates of poverty, who struggle to find work for long periods of time, who do not have the skills that they need to thrive online. Bridging the digital divide with affordable high-speed internet service and effective digital skills development can help those who feel crushed by the economic pressure of today to share in the opportunities of tomorrow. And that is what we're all about here. We've been talking about the digital divide, as I said, in this country for over 20 years. The good news is, thanks to the leadership of the Biden administration and a bipartisan group of people in Congress, we finally have been given the resources, serious resources, to do something substantial about it. And that's the work that I'm doing with my organization at the Commerce Department. The bipartisan infrastructure law gives the federal government over $65 billion, that's billion with a B, to turn the dream of closing the digital divide into a reality. We've committed, as I said, to connecting everyone in America with affordable, reliable, high-speed internet. We call this Internet for All, and we mean it. It's about more than just a connection, too, right? A wire or a connection to somebody's home doesn't do them a lot of good if they can't afford to get online. Even if they can afford to get online, it doesn't help them if they don't have the devices they need or the tools and skills they need to be able to thrive online and to succeed. So this effort is about connecting people, but it's also about equipping them with the skills, the devices, the capacity that they need to reap the full benefits of our now digital economy. The Biden administration fought to make sure that this law included key provisions that address those issues. Provisions like equity-based priorities, funding to address long-standing deficiencies in access, affordability, and adoption. There's two big programs that if you follow this, you'll hear a lot about. The first is a state grant program. We call it, it's called the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, the BEAD program. We also just call it our state grant program. $42 billion that will be given to states in the coming years with the idea of this is the connection program, this is deployment, it is making sure that we have the infrastructure where people don't have it, in rural America, suburban America, even in urban America where we know there are gaps in access. $42 billion going to the states in the coming years to make sure that everybody has the connection. The second big program that sometimes get overlooked, but it's really important, is our digital equity program. $3 billion that will also go largely to states in the beginning, but also there'll be individual community grants. $3 billion, and that's really about making sure that we're reaching everyone, providing devices, doing skills training for the people who need it. And our expectation is that if we do this right, these programs are going to have a huge impact on economic and social welfare for millions of people. We're spending billions of dollars. This is going to be a big deal. It will also have great benefits for businesses. It's going to give us more of an opportunity, first of all, for small businesses to connect with new and existing customers, to open up new markets. Once you're online, the world can be your customer, right? Once you're online, the chance to get talent to help you expands greatly. So the internet for all it has the potential to transform people's lives and to transform businesses. So what happens next with these billions of dollars? This summer, we hit a big milestone. Every state and territory in the country has now signed up to be part of these programs. Now the hard work begins. And we've given states a couple of homework assignments that they have to do before they get this money. They have to put in place a plan, an action plan for how they're going to use it, and they have to show us how they're going to connect everybody in their state. They also have to show us a digital equity plan that shows how they're going to hit these targets around equity for everyone. As they put these plans together, and this is going to happen in the coming months, this is something that's happening soon, right now actually, as the states are starting to gear up and put these plans together. We expect the first plans to come to us by the middle of next year. As they put the plans together for how they're going to spend their money, we've told them they need to be guided by local voices and diverse voices in their communities. That's because we know, something we were just talking about, that it's people who are on the ground who know best about where their communities need help, right? It's all of you who know where are people who can't get internet access, where are the opportunities to do better, right? And we are telling the states that they have to listen to local voices. They have to show us that they've listened to local community voices when they give us these plans. And then I think we've also learned that if we are going to be successful in these efforts, the prior panel was talking about trust, right? And I will say, I think we've heard it, I've heard it when I've been out in the field. I talk to people, why aren't you online? Why haven't you taken advantage of some of the federal programs that would help you? People don't trust the government, right? But they trust their local community leaders. They trust their local church leaders. They trust local business leaders. And that is why we need to do this all in partnership with you all, because we know we're not going to succeed if it's just the government alone coming and saying, let us help. We need to do that in conjunction with our partners in the community. So I would say my final point is we need your help if we're going to pull this off. This is an audacious mission. It's going to take years to do it, but there's a couple of things that you can do already right now. The first is I'd encourage all of you who are interested to stay involved in this process, especially at the state level. Every state now has a broadband office. That broadband office is going to be thinking about how to give away these billions of dollars. There's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars for each state. And how they give that out, how they deploy those monies to connect everybody is going to be really important. So connecting with them, and I will say we have at the Commerce Department, we've put a person in each, a staff member in each one of those states to make sure those states succeed and that they're listening to people out in the community. We can help connect you. You should stay connected with this work because, like I say, there's going to be a lot of money being spent and we want to make sure it's spent the right way. You should be making sure it's spent the right way to help your community. A second big thing is think about, we're encouraging everybody to think about the workforce opportunities here, right? We will be spending as a country, again, billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars in the coming years to build this infrastructure, right? That means, President Biden has said, this is not just a connection program. This is a jobs program, right? This is a program that's that's a catalyst for creating new jobs. And Secretary Raimondo, my boss, often talks about her strong desire, her belief these need to be diverse jobs. These need to include people from all of our communities, and that is best when the communities themselves are the ones who are building. So think about how you and your businesses may plug into these programs. There's going to be a big opportunity here, whether it's in the training side, whether it's actually doing the deployments, whether it's the digital equity work. There's going to be a lot of opportunity here. The last thing, I'll just make a very quick plug for a program. It's not my department's program, but it's something that FCC is doing around affordability, and it's called the Affordable Connectivity Program. We call it ACP. I know, so many acronyms, but today, low-income Americans can get a significant subsidy to help them with their broadband access. We know that for millions and millions of families, the internet is still too expensive. And so there's a $30 a month subsidy. $30 a month can get you, some internet service. And there are programs and plans that many of the big providers have put in place specifically so that basically the internet will be free for people who sign up for this program. And there's a wide variety of folks who are eligible. You can go to getinternet.gov. There's also a phone number, getinternet.gov. There's also a phone number. If you go to the NTIA's website, we've got it plastered all over. So I'd say this is something news you can use right now for people in your community who need help. I'll just say in closing, this is a moment of huge challenge and opportunity for us in this country, in this space. Generations before us, they brought water, they brought electricity to everyone in America. They built the interstate highway system, right? This is our generation's infrastructure moment. This is our chance to build something that will give everybody the opportunity to connect to what they need, the tools they need to thrive in the modern digital economy. And I really believe that we are going to look back 10 or 20 years from now and say, this was the moment, this was the time when we actually did the thing that we've been talking about for 20 plus years, and we connected everybody in America with the tools they need to thrive online in the digital economy. It's going to take a lot of work. We are excited to be here and to partner with you. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your partnership in this work, and congratulations on your great program here today. I'm just thrilled to be part of it. So thank you, and look forward to talking more.
Please welcome to the stage the CEO of the Asian Business Association and the co-chair of the National Ace Foundation Board of Directors, Dennis Wong.
Thank you, Daniel. You make me sound so good, though. Thank you very much. But Alan, before you go, since I'm up here having the platform, and he's not, but it's okay. But I'll tell you, I know we're being lobbied by the middle mile folks, but not only the middle mile, but the last mile is very important, right? So we want to make sure we are part of that conversation. So thank you very much for sharing that. And Susan, while you're there as well, just fantastic. Can I just say that? Fantastic. I love what she did. It's like a nice podcast. She summarized it for me, and I took 1, 2, and 3 notes. Fantastic. So thank you again. Shout out to my West Coast folks. West Coast, anybody? So, you know, we got up at 3 in the morning, is it? But if you're in Hawaii, anybody from Hawaii? Yes? Was that like midnight over there when you woke up this morning? I don't know. It's just the whole time thing. But hey, my name is Dennis Huang, Executive Director for the Asian Business Association. I'm also head of the foundation. Just want to welcome you, being here and relax. But I get the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. So I'm going to read if it's okay with you, because I don't have it memorized like some of our folks here. Here we are. It's my pleasure to introduce our next and final speaker this morning, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Policy, Michele Chang. Economic Development Administration plays an important role in supporting economic development strategy designed to spur private sector investment and create and retains American jobs. Ms. Chang is a seasoned executive with nearly 20 years of experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. She was most recently the executive director for Rework, not WeWork, Rework America. Give me a second, I lost my spot because I wanted to make sure I get that right. Rework American Business Network at the Markle Foundation, where she worked with Fortune 500 companies to help American workers without a 4-year degree to get skillful job that they need to acquire quality jobs. And I think that's something really remarkable. I know we push our kids to do 4-year colleges, but that's something really we should really look at. And really, please give me a round of applause for one welcome to Assistant Secretary Michele Chang, everybody.
Thank you, Dennis, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. So nice to be with you all today. It's nice to see an actual crowd of big people in person. As Dennis mentioned, yes, a lot of the work that I've done in the past and currently is all about helping everyone achieve their full potential and be able to get the jobs and the lifestyle that they're all looking for. And so I want to first of all thank you all at ACE for having me here today. For more than a decade, your organization has been a voice for Asian American and Pacific Islanders, and your efforts have helped improve the economic, political, social well-being of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. Every day, ACE works to encourage business expansion within the community and champions the next generation of AAPI entrepreneurs. At EDA, we share that same commitment. I'd like to share with you first, briefly, an overview of the work that we do at EDA. For those of you who are not familiar, the Economic Development Administration is a bureau within the Department of Commerce, like my colleague Alan, who just spoke here. EDA is the only federal government agency that solely is exclusively focused on economic development. While we do not invest directly in businesses, we do work closely with local economic development officials to support competitive, bottom-up, regionally focused development strategies that are focused on stimulating private investment and creating new jobs. Our flexible investment programs help communities revitalize, expand, and upgrade their physical infrastructure, while also establishing technology, business incubators, and accelerators. We are looking to attract new industries and jobs and provide technical assistance to manufacturers affected by import competition, help businesses obtain critical gap financing that they might otherwise have. And in the Biden and Harris administration, we really recommitted ourselves to equity. You heard Alan talk a lot about equity, but at the EDA, our #1 investment priority is equity. And what that means to us is that when we think about our grant programs, which is our primary programming, is we provide grants to communities across our country, the #1 thing that we're looking at is that it's benefiting underserved populations and communities. And so that's key to what we do. And Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and other communities of color, as well as women, tribal nations, and rural areas are included in that when we look at equity. While EDA's program budget has historically hovered around $300 million, over the last several years, we have seen a massive increase in our budget. Through the CARES Act, through the American Rescue Plan Act, we are now a multi-billion-dollar organization, which is really exciting, but also comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of really exciting things that we're doing. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done with those funds, particularly for the AAPI community. And I just want to say, obviously as a member of the AAPI community, this is something that's very personal to me. And so really encourage you all to work with us. We do have what we call economic development representatives in every state, somebody who's assigned to every state in our country. And so definitely encourage you all to reach out to those folks. I'm happy to connect you. We really want to find opportunities to make sure that our community has the opportunity to access these funds and these resources that can really help revitalize communities across our country. So to talk a little bit about what we've done, we've made a series of investments in the AAPI community. Anyone from Los Angeles here? So I'm not from LA, but I am from California. I'm from San Jose, California, and I did go to school in LA and at UCLA, so it is very near and dear to my heart, fellow Bruins out there. As many of you know, LA is home to more Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders than any other county in the United States. In 2020, the EDA provided an $11 million grant to the Los Angeles County Development Authority, an EDA-recognized economic development district. And we provided that money for them to administer revolving loan funds. This grant was designed to extend credit to small, diverse businesses in underserved communities and augment business recovery assistance that's already underway to avert job losses and closure. We recently recapitalized this fund and provided an additional $11 million in investment. In 2021, we capitalized a revolving loan fund in Hawaii as well, and I heard there were some Hawaiians in the crowd. We provided nearly $650,000 to its Feed the Hunger Fund. This nonprofit organization has been active in Hawaii for more than a decade, administering food-focused loan programs that work to provide capital access to communities excluded from traditional financing options. This project supports Hawaiian small farmers, agricultural producers, a majority of whom are AAPI. They also provide designated lending designed to mitigate the economic impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, we also provided a $21.2 million grant to the Northern Mariana Islands. Anyone from there today? Awesome, excellent. That's an area that we really wanted to provide support to help the region's tourism economy. The grant was provided to rebuild the Olehi Sports Complex and created an adjacent cultural event site. Earlier this year, the redeveloped complex served as the host to the 2022 Pacific Mini Games, which brought thousands of athletes and spectators to the Mariana Islands from across the Pacific for an international spectacle of sports and cultures, which is really exciting. According to grantee estimates, EDA investments directly contributed to the creation of nearly 500 jobs, while it did also indirectly support business growth and development in the Mariana Islands. In Guam, EDA provided a $2 million grant to support the establishment of a permanent space for Guam Contractors Association's Trade Academy. This institution provides vocational training opportunities leading to good-paying jobs amongst Guam's predominantly AAPI community. Due to this commitment, more than 60,000 locals are now employed in skilled trades in the territory, and Guam has been able to lessen its reliance on construction workers. EDA recently supplemented this award with another $500 million grant. Now I want to talk about the American Rescue Plan. Hopefully this is something that you all have heard about. We at EDA received an unprecedented $3 billion through the American Rescue Plan Act, and this is why I was personally brought on to help oversee the implementation of this program. $3 billion is a big difference from the $500 million or $300 million that we typically work with. And so we saw this as an opportunity to really rethink the way that we invest in communities and how we think about how we can do grant giving in a way that can help our communities, particularly in this time as we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So with the $3 billion, we created 6 grant programs. I'm going to focus on 2 of them, the Build Back Better Regional Challenge and the Good Jobs Challenge. For those of you who may follow EDA, we recently made 2 major announcements around these 2 programs. For the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, we actually were really fortunate to have the president himself, Joe Biden, announce the winners of this challenge. This was a 2-phased approach, and the whole point of this program was, with this big infusion of cash, EDA has typically done kind of smaller grants, a large number of small grants. So we tend to do hundreds of grants in the couple $1 million range. For this program, we decided to do a $1 billion program, and we gave 21 regions across the country between $25 and $65 million each to invest in growing emerging industries to really help spur economic development in those industries. We had a 2-phased approach. We got tremendous demand for it. 529 regions applied for this grant. We selected 60 finalists, and I believe it was on September 2nd, President Biden announced the 21 finalists that won the implementation grants for this program. These are coalitions made up of universities, nonprofit organizations, businesses, community groups, state and local governments, really thinking about a bold vision of how they could reimagine their economies if given that amount of investment. So the types of projects that we're investing in range from securing domestic supply of essential medicines in Southeast Virginia to address rising drug costs, to improving the productivity of hundreds of family-owned farms in the California Central Valley, resulting in better jobs and a more resilient food system. We're also investing in legacy manufacturers in El Paso, Texas, to bring critical aerospace and defense supply chains back to the United States. We're also investing in Detroit, which predominantly, as you know, is a big auto town, where we're reinvesting to help them really think about the move and the transition to electric vehicles. And what that means is not just the manufacturing and the facilities to do that, but also the workforce and the training and the workers to be able to do that work. We at EDA recognize that the last few years, businesses have faced a lot of hiring challenges as well. And so one of the other programs I want to talk about that we did through the American Rescue Plan Act is the Good Jobs Challenge. And this is one that's very near and dear to my heart. I've spent the 5 years before I joined the administration focused on workforce development. Our secretary is very committed to workforce development. We created a $500 million challenge to help Americans get the training they need to get placed into good quality jobs. Not just any dead-end job, but a job that will provide good wages, career progression, and an opportunity to continue to move on and to support their families. So with this program, in early August, we announced 32 programs that we are funding. We got over 500 applications again, but I do want to highlight one of the communities that we were able to support, which is an AAPI community. Among our winners was the University of Hawaii, which received a $16 million grant for us for their Resilient Hawaii project. This project supports 4 of Hawaii's major industries: healthcare, IT, energy, and resilience, as well as their film and arts and media industry. The partnerships that we're funding will train thousands of workers with a focus on Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders to secure quality jobs with local employers, including Avent, Health Castle, the Bank of Hawaii, and Diagnostic Laboratory Services. That was one of the key things of this program. We required applicants to secure commitments from employers to actually hire the workers that they trained. What we really wanted to not fund was what our secretary calls train and pray programs. We want to train and place and continue to advance workers along a career pathway. I'm getting the countdown clock here, so I will wrap this up. But all to say is we have a lot of great opportunities at the EDA. If you haven't worked with us before, again, I really encourage you to reach out to your local economic development representative. You can find all the contacts on our website, eda.gov/contact. And just want to say, over the last few years, we know that there have been great strides that we have made to support the AAPI community, but we know that there's more that can be done. So I look forward to more conversations with you all and just really welcome the conversation of how we can work better together. And really, again, congratulations on this great event, and it's great to see you all today. Thank you.
Once again, please welcome Dr. Karen Eng.
You do understand I always like the voice of God, right? Love it, love it. Thank you. Where'd she go? Oh, there you are. Hi. Thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary. Before we take our 15 minutes and go into the breakout sessions, I would like to remind you again, your name tag QR code is the agenda. The thing on your table QR code is the silent auction. There's so many items that were donated by our generous small businesses, and we're supporting the AAPI small businesses. So please scan the code and support our cause. Please take the opportunity to network. It's very important, and we all love doing it, but please watch the time as the breakout sessions start in 15 minutes, which is 10:30, I think. 10:30. All right, please pick a breakout session of your choice. And I also need to tell you that the meeting room locations have been changed because it's so popular. You guys are like sold out the conference. So exit this door, go straight across. The 2 breakout sessions is, first one, building strategic partnerships through allyship. That will be held in meeting room D. And the second one is equity in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That is in meeting room E. So thank you for being here this morning. Wake up a little more, get some coffee, let's go. You guys were a little more partying last night, so all right, see you guys later. Bye.